Today's task is a bit less creative and more technical. We are going to unwrap the 3D model into a 2D UV layout, allowing us to paint and project 2D textures onto 3D model and apply shaders. We briefly discussed this in introduction series about Blender on this channel. In short, your model is going to resemble cloth templates that you might have seen on a tailor shop before it's all stitched up. So the reason for this is that textures images are 2D and can't conform to 3D space. So we need to unfold the model in 2D space to use images as textures in shader. So welcome back everyone, this is Ram from Crossmind Studio and you are watching chapter number 8 of the animated character creation series. For the premium version of this course, which includes 10 bonus chapters, project files and other useful resources, check out the details, hotkeys, PDF and more in the description. Let's dive right in. The only complex part which I see is main body. Other than that, these are pretty simple ones. So let's start with the most basic one first. In this one viewport, I'm going to bring one UV editor and at the left we have the model. All right, let's say we start with these shots. I'm going to isolate this one and a few things we need to do before we start. First, go to the edit mode. This is where we can unfold our UVs. Make sure you have UV editor on the right. Go to the shading viewport shading, and here if you remember, we had made one simple material for everything just for the preview. Within that material itself, we are going to apply one simple texture, image texture, and this could be, click on new, call it UV or anything. This could be 2K or 4K, whatever. We just want to see basic UV grid or color grid, and once we plug that into the base color, you won't see much because we haven't UV mapped this model yet. So just want to make sure that the material is actually working. Preview material we have in material override. Let's go back to UV editor. Let's go to the edit mode. If I select all of these faces and just press U and unwrap it, this is auto unwrapping. All right, but we need certain kind of layout, like how you tailor clothes, you have a layout. So I'm just going to select few sides through and through, which is going to cut our model and lay it flat. So this seems like a good edge. Now press Ctrl E for basically the edge menu and mark seam. So this becomes a seam from where UV editor is going to cut it open. Do the same thing on the other side, mark seam. Just make sure it's selecting the entire loop. If there is any weird disconnection between, just guide it until it meets the end. So here as well, I think any of these loops will work fine. Mark seam. Select all the open borders. Mark seam. And this upper border as well. Mark seams. And just make sure this edge meets here as well. Mark seam. So let's see how it turns out. So here in the viewport, I'm just going to click on options, live unwrap, select all of these, U, unwrap. Now we have all the sides unwrapped properly. All right. Now if I go to the shading viewport, this should show me the texture that we had before. Shader editor, preview material. So at this moment, we are using preview material in override. So the thing is, override material doesn't show up in viewport shading. So what I'll do is instead select the material which is there on the shots. Here I'm going to manually assign this material override as well so that I can see it in the viewport. You can see all the UVs, basically the texturing is happening evenly. Nothing seems stretched out. If I disconnect this, click on generated or something, then this is the kind of stretching that could happen if you don't have UVs. All right, just to make sure that there is no stretching, just go to the UV editor, select everything, click on the sync, minimize, stretch. Now this is going to just relax things down a bit if there's any tension in between edges. So it's sort of a relax tool. You can do a few more things as well. You have relax brush here. Just make sure to not overdo any of it. Lock borders. So I don't find it necessary at this moment. Everything seems like it's working fine. Just make sure to utilize all the space you have here. So just going to put this here next to the other side, which is this one, and these two here. Just not scaling this up and down too much because I don't want the texture scale to vary. All right, so this seems fine. Save your file. Now let's do the same thing for the jacket. Just disable the geometry node modifier first, otherwise it's going to give you some of these weird things in the viewport. All right, so similarly I'm going to apply same material on the jacket so I can see things, visualize the UVs. First thing I'm going to do is assign seams. So this right here for the sleeves, mark seam. Let's do the same on the other side, mark seam. I'm going to select this seam as well, which is going all the way till here. Just want to make sure that it's reaching the end. If not, then just select the last edge and connect it, mark seam, and select the border, mark seam as well. There are a few things here. I think this needs to be connected to this one. Just cross check on the intersections as well if things are connecting well. Sometimes there's a tiny edge in between that could lead to mesh not unfolding properly. All right, now I'm just going to select this bottom one, mark seam this, and then we have this one edge for the front opening, and on the both sides we have this edge. So let's do that, and it seems like there's a break here. Then I'm just thinking whether or not we should I think we can leave the collars. We'll see how this turns out. So since we have live unwrapping clicked here, so while we were assigning seams, this was unfolding automatically. So since we have the UV sync selection enabled, whatever I select in viewport, it's going to show up here. So right now I do see a bit of trouble, and it seems like we didn't really select border here. So I'm going to mark seam this one. Let's see if things are connecting well. So this part, front and back unfolded properly, but this side unfolded from only the one side. That's because we didn't actually made a seam here, mark seam on this side, and then mark seam here. And let's see if this is meeting intersection. Just cross-checking end where it meets the border. So this is back, front, and then this whole jacket is not cutting open properly. So something in these parts, and this is where it's stuck. So I can maybe select this part, zoom in, and see if I can make these parts meet with the intersection. And there you go. This is back, and this is front. Now we have a bit of problem here. So just solving it one by one. So this front side is open. Now right here, this is the other right front side, and it seems we don't have a seam here. So somewhere it's not meeting the end. Mark seam here as well, And then at the top, let's cross check. Somewhere here we have disconnection. And I'm going to mark seam here as well. And I think we have it. So if we shade viewport properly, now let's see if there's any stretching happening. So the jacket seems fine, but it seems like pocket geometry need a bit of room for UV. It's maybe shrinking down too much. We can separate out these pockets from the seams right here. Let's see if it's going through and through. If I mark this as seam, so it's going to rip apart this whole section, place it somewhere else. Let's do the same for the other side. Yeah. So this and this part, I'm going to merge at center. There was a bit of problem with geometry. Mark seam as well. So both the pockets are now separate part. Now this part is a bit deep, so I don't want to go in and out too much. So instead, I'm just going to select the main loops. Maybe I can select the whole flap, pocket cover, and mark these as seam. And as we are assigning new seams, you can clearly see the UVs are starting to work out properly. All right, so this seems fine. Let's do the same on the other side. So that is all. Now I'm going to select everything and minimize stretch. And let's see, minimize stretching. If you click anywhere, it's going to interrupt the stretching. It's basically going to stop relaxing and leave this pop-up open where you can adjust the iterations later. This was 800. So this seems a bit too much. I'm just going to go 100. Actually, yeah, so I think this looks fine. We don't really have much of stretching happening in any of the areas. I can clearly see all the squares showing up in the size is similar. Now we are going to go for gap. For this, let's first assign the borders. Mark seam. Then we can select one of these. We can separate out this guy right here and one of these. Just going to apply a preview material. Yeah, this looks fine. I'm going to apply preview material on shoes as well, so we can see the UV. Now for the shoes, I'm just going to isolate this one for now. First thing, select the borders, mark seam, and just by selecting the borders, we have solved a lot of UV problems. So just going to select this main loop, which separates out main shoe from the sole. This right here. All right. Just select any loop which is separating the entire upper and lower body of the shoe, the full complete loop, and mark that as a seam. Do the same for the other sections as well, front and back. Don't necessarily have to follow the exact same edges. Just observe your model, see what kind of sections you have in your model, and based on that you make select these bigger patches and make the seams. Since you have live unwrapping enabled, you can quickly just preview how it's unfolding in UV editor. Just keep making seams and check the layout, undo if it's not working out, and Alt H to unhide it. And so this guy right here seems to have some problem in UVs. So I think it could be, let's hide this guy so that we can see what's going on here. So the borders are running from here. I'm just looking for edges which separate out the inner lining of the shoe from the outer leather part. So just I think these edges should be what separate out the outer and inner part. We just need to unfold this one. I'm pressing L to select all the linked faces till the seam, but it's not selecting the entire patch. So these two edges were not meeting, and because of that, front island was not opening up properly in UVs. Seems like there's a bit of stretching going on. What I'm thinking is separate out this bottom part. Let's look at the UVs. Let's see what's going on here. So it seems like both of these are still merged somewhere at this part right here. Yeah, so here's a bit of loose connection. So mark this as seam. Now it seems like it's working fine. All the UVs seems to have similar proportions. These shoelaces are made of car objects, so usually they have automatic UV coordinates, which should work, but we'll see later if it requires UV. Let's work on the socks for now. Mark seam for socks, mark seam, and there you go, socks is done. The most easiest object. Yeah, just make sure to pack islands, all right, so that it utilizes most of the area in the texture. Now comes the main part, main body of the character. Let's assign few seams right here, just making selection with shift and control. Mark seam, and then we want to create a separation between the main head and this part. Mark seam here as well. Then you can select these arms. Then maybe I'm just thinking, just cross check everything first. I think I'm just going to create a seam for ears. Mark seam, and yeah, just forgot to mention, if your model is symmetrical, and then let's say if we make a few seams here, mark seam, and right here. So what you can do is you can select one of these edges, the seams, and then you can select similar seam. All right, so it's going to select all the seams, and then you can select mirror, and then this is going to select all the edges on the opposite side as well, and then you can mark seam here as well. All right, so this works if your model is symmetrical. So yeah, it's quite useful. Let's do the same for hands. Somewhere here till here. Seams, clear seams here. Just going to make a separate one for thumb, and then so let's see what's happening in hands. So maybe if I remove seam from one of these edges, it won't make a separate island for this entire thing and keep it as one mesh. For the rest of the arm, we are going to do a similar kind of UV that we did for a t-shirt and stuff. I'm just thinking maybe from here till here, mark seam. Yeah, so character is slowly unfolding. For the back, I can select this somewhere till here, mark seam, and from here you can take a bit of turn till here, and now let's select one of these seams, select similar seam, and then select mirror, and then mark seam. So now it's happening on the both sides. So something is not right. So the face is not really unfolding in a way that I was expecting. So just not sure what exactly is happening. What is this right here? I'm just going to manually select the entire thing and see what's going on. Control plus is to expand your selection just for beginners, and unwrap this separately. Yeah. Maybe it's because of some selection error. So I'm just going to rotate this minus 90 degrees and then apply the material that we have for UVs. Preview material. Let's look at the preview. Yeah. So there's too much going on for the head. So I'm just going to put the entire head in one of the UVs. Then maybe I can make a separate one for this. So it seems like we need a little more to unfold this properly. So I'm just thinking, what if I make a cut here? This is not really a character made in realistic proportions. So I'm just thinking, if I make a few cuts here, then maybe I can solve this. Something strange is going on here. I'm not sure what the issue is, but I'm just trying to figure it out. If I leave this one edge, it straightens out the UV, but if I connect it through and through, it's kind of making this weird shape. So I'm just going to leave it as it is. So this seems fine. Let's see if the rest of the things are working okay. Oops, forgot to turn off this shape key that we had made for mouth open. You can delete it if you want. What I would like to do here is instead of using all the UVs on the same plate, I can create a multiple textures so that face utilizes the most of the area in the texture, and just small things which might won't even be seen under the clothes can take a separate low resolution texture maybe. Basically, instead of crunching everything down in one tile, we can make another tile and apply two textures in two different parts. It's called Hue-Dim. Let me explain a bit about it. In the shader editor, I'm just going to duplicate this material. I'm just going to duplicate this material and call this body shader. And now in the body shader, I'm just going to get rid of this whole thing. Now here we are going to create one new image texture, and in this new image texture we are going to click on new. Let's call this one face and click on tiled. This will make it a Hue-Dim. So instead of one UV tile, we'll now have multiple UV tiles. I'm going to bring color grid. As of now, we can paint over it later on. 4068 by 4068. If you want, you can do a 2K texture. That's completely alright. 1K, 2K, the kind of RAM and machine you're using. For this kind of simple character, I think 2K resolution is fine as well. So I'm just going to create this new texture and plug that in the base color. Control T to bring the coordinates for mapping with the Node Wrangler add-on. And now if you go to the UV editor, we have face right here. So if I just select this entire thing, just the face part, let's go to the face mode and press L on face and turn it around minus 90 degrees and put it right here. Now, if you go to the image section in UV editor here, you'll see it's showing Hue-Dim tiles instead of single image now. Now I can create one more tile, and this tile I want to keep it, you can actually keep it low resolution like 2K or something. But for now, I'm going to keep it 4068 by 4068, 4K texture. Label this one if you want. You can just write a name for it. All right, but I'll just leave it blank. So 1001 is main tile, 1002 is the second tile. I forgot to enable UV grid, color grid. 4068, 4068, and then we can select all of these, UV, pack island, closest Hue-Dim, and this is going to pack it inside the second Hue-Dim we have. So now let's see, I think we might would need a seam here, from here to here, mark seam, and from here to here as well, mark seam, and these parts. In the UV editor, if you press L to select the linked faces, you can select seams from the pop-up menu. So it's going to select the entire island till the seam. So these parts I can move into the first UDIM, and the rest of the things I can move to the second UDIM. So every time we make a new seam, it's going to reset the layout or make changes in the layout because our live unwrapping is enabled. So I'm just going to disable that in a moment. I'm just going to disable live unwrapping so that any changes I do now won't really affect the layout. We just need to make few more seams in the legs. I'm just going to disable this texture for now. You can always load it again. We have the UDIM tiles here. So now I can see it properly. So it seems like we'll have to create a seam for legs as well. From here to here, I can mark a seam. From here till here, one more seam. Then I'll press L to select the linked faces on the both legs, and then press U to unwrap it manually because our live unwrapping is disabled. When you're moving stuff around, just make sure you're in face mode. Otherwise, it's going to move the shared edges as well, or vertices. Faces are not shared. All right. So let's bring back the UV, the texture that we have. So just going to do a bit of manual work right here. First, I'm going to put aside these. Then I'm going to put aside arms. So these are arms, and then these are hands. So these are feet. Feet won't be visible at all. So I can completely shrink it down like this. And then these are top of the hand. This is inside of the mouth. So this can shrink, we can shrink it down a little. It's not taking much of space, but still. So hands will be the most visible part in the body. So I'm just going to scale it up like this. Body, not so much. So I think it's fine this way. We can try and minimize the stretch, if any happening here. It seems to be working fine, but right now I just want to make sure arms are in similar proportions. So just keep an eye on this texture that we have. The whole purpose of this is so that we can visualize the stretch and the scale of the UV. So if this checker texture looks too small or too big at certain part, then you can always scale those particular islands up and down to keep the UVs consistent. Before I jump on to anything else, I just want to make sure that we save this file, this texture that we have made, face, which we assign on the main body. This we need to save. So let's save it. It's going to automatically create tiles. And here you can see face udim.png. Once I save it, it's going to take a while, maybe. And if I try to save as, you can see there are two face tiles, face 001.png, face 002.png. So these two textures are automatically loaded here because Blender knows that in the shader editor, we are using UDIM tiles in the texture. The texture is not a single image, it's using tiles. And within those tiles in UV editor or in image editor, in image section, within those tiles, it's assigning texture space udim.png. Now, if I let's say go to the texture paint any of the details. Let's say if I make one plus sign here, it's going to paint on udim1. If I write a question, it's going to paint on udim2. And if I save these, it's going to save all the udims all together. And let's go to the save as. You'll see my textures are updating right here. All right, I'm just going to undo a few of these changes and save the tiles. Just be a bit careful. After you're done doing the UDIM part, save your image textures. Now we are going to jump on to the next part, which is bag. And on this, we are going to apply the same preview material. And I'm just going to disable the preview of that particular image. That one was just for the body, the face that we have here. And for this guy right here, what we can do, let's see. First, I'm going to select just the main body and press H, hide unselected from the pop-up menu. I'm just going to do a few bold selections here. Maybe this guy right here. So these two look good for seam. Then we can mark this as seam. Unwrap. Yeah, this looks like a character, right? The nose and mouth. Anyways, so maybe we can create one seam here. Let's see preview. Mark seam for the pockets. So it seems like we have a problem here. So I'm just going to subdivide this edge, connect vertex path, connect it with this one, and I'll do the same for this guy right here. So any problems you see, just try to fix it on the spot. Just doing my part to make sure there are no errors left for later part as much as I can do. I think this should work. One more seam here. Let's see. Unhide with Alt H. I'm just going to quickly unwrap this guy. These could use UVs as well. So just going to repeat the same process a few more times. Select the edges through and through, mostly the borders and the main sections, and keep assigning seams. And because you have live unwrapping enabled, it should give you quick and nice feedback of how it's unfolding. And you can see the visualization in the texture, basically the color grid that we have. So if it unfolds properly, you're going to see these nice and even squares. So for these basic parts, I think it shouldn't be too difficult to unwrap. I think this is done as well. And just the top, just the cover part we need to unfold. I think we can separate out this entire flap from the rest of the pocket so that it's a clean cutout. Just going to hide this whole thing and quickly unwrap these straps as well. Just doing a basic job. I'm not quite sure if we will be actually painting some stuff on this bag, but let's say you want to create some seams like stitches or something in texture. So it didn't took much time, and this is quite a basic unwrapping. Something happened here. I'm not quite sure what actually triggered this. So before we unwrapped these, it was working fine, but after the straps, strange. Just going to unwrap it separately and select everything, UV pack islands. I'm just going to do a quick check for if there is any stretching in some parts. All right, so I think our character is done, and this guy is the most simplest one. Just going to isolate this, quickly create few seams which are inside, mark seam, and a few vertical edges at the back, mark seam as well, and there you go. Even easier than the socks. We are just going to apply the same preview material to visualize the UVs. And if you're not sure about hair, you can see UVs are working fine because it's a curve object, and UVs are auto assigned. Just select all of these and select this one, Control L, link material. So let's see if there's anything else. I'm just thinking about the face of the character. I'm just thinking if we can improve some of these parts. Should we or should we not? What I feel is the lips part are a bit stretched and sort of there's pinching happening. So what if I apply one little stroke of relax brush right here. Same for the mouth. In the shader editor, I'm just going to increase the scale of this texture And then from the UDIMs, I'm just going to single image for now, just to visualize this part. Now it's a simple tileable texture instead of UDIMs. We can always change this back to UDIM and type 1 here. So single image, just to visualize this. Yeah, so there is a bit of stretching happening here. So that's a problem. I guess we can fix that. So I think the smoothing is required. We can just select certain parts. Press C for circle selection brush. And then I'm going to search minimize stretch and see if it works. So it did reduce a bit of stretching, but we need to find a decent balance. Just working with relax brush here. Just trying to match the tile size on lips with the rest of the things. So what if I select these vertices, the entire border, and then scale this up with proportionate editing enabled to give it a bit more room. Yeah, just scale it up a little. Scroll your brush up and down with mouse wheel when using proportionate editing. I think this might work. We just need to be a bit more subtle. And the inside of the mouth, I can scale down like this. Yeah, I think that did the trick. And now we can go back to our shader editor, change it back to from single image to UDIM and texture scale to 1. And let's see. Yeah, this looks fine. Just thinking in the nose area as well, we can use a bit of relaxation right here. Just going to scale it up like this with proportionate editing enabled. It's going to scale the rest of the edges around. That pinching is a bit reduced. Cheeks are fine. Cheeks, eyes, and that's it. Now here I'm going to create one shape key and call it eyes closed. And in this one, I'm simply going to first enable the symmetry in x-axis. I'm just going to move these down roughly from here till here. Just move it down like this. Just try to close the eyelids from here to here. SZ, select the entire grid, close the both sides, and SZ again with the proportionate editing enabled. Just make sure these loops are transforming gradually around the eyelids. Now if you go to the object mode, you scrub this number all the way till here. Now you can see in the mesh, there's the texture around eyelids is stretching. So we need to fix that in UV. So I'm just going to select these loops right here and this one, scale these down. SY in the Y axis, just scale it down with proportionate editing enabled. And you can see by scrolling your proportionate editing brush up and down, you can do a decent job like here. So that's it. Now for the t-shirt, do the same thing. Select these edges, assign seam, mark seam on the borders, mark seam, make a cut on the side, mark seam, make a cut on the top, mark seam as well. Select a seam in the collars, select one, select similar seams, select mirror. You get the point, right? It's the same thing, same process. And quickly unwrap this UV editor. So yeah, auto unwrapping did work. So this is fine. And I think your character is done. And also in the viewport shading, if you're wondering why the UV maps look so faded, that's because the subsurface scattering here, which I had used for clay rendering. So if you'd like to have a clear view of your UVs, just reduce the subsurface and it will make the entire texture clearer in the viewport. So that's about it. Our model is ready for shading and texturing. In the next video, we'll shade the main body of the character. We'll do a bit of basic color painting, mainly on the face, just to explain the process. Along with the head, we'll also work on hair and eye shader. By the end of it, the face of the character will start to look more lively, and you won't have to see this gray flat shaded model anymore. Jump to Discord server if you'd like to discuss anything related to this on channel dedicated to this series. Check pinned comment for frequently asked questions and problems. Check description for PDF of keyboard shortcuts, discount coupons and other mentioned resources for this tutorial. If you enjoyed this chapter, do check out the full playlist and hope you continue all the way till the end. Also consider buying the premium version and unlock the additional chapters and project files and bonus content, which will take you through the process of rigging with Rigify, creating a nice walk cycle animation, creating secondary animations using plot physics and bone constraints, and rendering your entire project using Cycles Render Engine. Share your work with me on Instagram, tag me with InstaCrossMind, and participate in discussion on Discord channel for this course. Links are in the description. Please give it a like and subscribe and stay tuned for more. Share your thoughts in the comment section and don't forget to share it with your colleagues and on social media to help us reach the wider audience. Thank you for all your support and love. Let's jump to the next video.